The hegemony cruiser Eternal Dominion hung in the void like a metal cathedral, its hull scarred by centuries of conquest. Admiral Vexthari clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as he reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The human colony, ship Wanderer's Dream, had been utterly destroyed 3 cycles ago. Its 20,000 passengers vaporized in the initial bombardment. No survivors. The humans' desperate expansion into hegemony space had been met with swift, brutal efficiency. Admiral, his aide, Commander Kilvash, approached with measured steps. Long-range sensors are detecting an anomaly in the Korath Nebula. It appears to be wreckage. Sir, Vexthari's compound eyes shifted to the holographic display. Debris fields were common in this sector. The hegemony had been thorough in their extermination campaigns. But something about this particular signature made his exoskeleton crawl with unease. Analysis: the metallurgy is consistent with human vessel construction, but the energy readings are unusual. There's some kind of localized gravitic distortion around the wreckage. The Admiral's mandibles twitched. The humans had proven annoyingly resourceful before their extinction. Their last colony ship, the Wanderer's Dream, had been equipped with experimental technology that the hegemony's xenobiological researchers were still attempting to understand. Neural interface systems that could link organic consciousness to quantum computing matrices. Theoretical applications in consciousness transfer, memory storage, even digital resurrection. Set course for the nebula. Full military deployment. Whatever's out there, we finish it. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as its massive drives engaged, carrying 800 hegemony warriors toward their destiny. Behind them, 12 escort vessels maintained formation, their weapon systems already charging. In the nebula's heart, something stirred. The wreckage wasn't from the Wanderer's Dream, it was the dream itself, or what remained of it. Twisted metal. Its shattered hull plating drifted in impossible patterns, held together by crackling fields of energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. At the debris field center, a single escape pod tumbled slowly, its life support system somehow still functioning after 3 cycles in the void die inside. Captain Lyra Valdres hung suspended in a biogel cocoon. Her body kept alive by machines while her mind wandered through digital purgatory. The neural interface crown around her skull flickered with data streams, connected to the ship's quantum core even as the vessel died around her. When the hegemony attack had begun, she'd made a choice that violated every protocol in human spacesheet. Opened a direct link to the ship's consciousness matrix, and absorbed the dying thoughts of 20,000 souls. They lived inside her now. 20,000 voices, 20,000 memories, 20,000 burning desires for revenge. The ship's AI had tried to warn her about the psychological dangers, but she'd overridden the safety protocols. Someone had to survive. Someone had to remember. Someone had to make them pay. The pod sensors detected the approaching hegemony fleet. Lyra's eyes snapped open, glowing with phosphorescent data streams around her. The quantum field generators hummed to life, drawing power from the nebula's exotic matter. The wreckage began to move, pieces reassembling themselves in defiance of physics. "Wake up," she whispered to the ghost in her head. "It's time." The Eternal Dominion decelerated as it reached the nebula's edge. Admiral Vexthari studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. The debris field was organizing itself, forming structures that shouldn't be possible. Energy signatures were spiking across the electromagnetic spectrum. "Sir," Commander Kilvash's voice carried a tremor of fear, "we're detecting life signs. One human biosignature, but the neural activity readings are impossible. It's like there are thousands of consciousness patterns overlapping." Vexthari's blood ran cold. The human's neural interface technology had been theoretical, untested. If they'd actually succeeded in creating a collective consciousness matrix. "Battle stations," he commanded. "All weapons online. Whatever abomination is out there. We end it now." The wreckage pulsed once, twice, then erupted in a cascade of energy. Debris streams twisted into impossible configurations, forming a ship that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. At its heart, Lyra Valdres stood in a chamber that wasn't quite real, surrounded by the translucent forms of 20,000 dead humans. "Target acquired," she said, her voice echoing with the harmonics of the collective. "Weapons free." The war was about to begin. The Eternal Dominion opened fire first, its primary plasma cannons unleashing torrents of superheated gas that should have vaporized anything in their path. Instead, the energy streams struck shifting barriers of crystallized space-time, deflecting harmlessly into the nebulous depths. The impossible ship that had assembled itself. From the Wanderer's Dreams corpse returned fire with weapons that violated the laws of physics. Quantum torpedoes materialized inside the hegemony cruiser's shields, detonating in engineering sections and crew quarters. The warheads existed in probability states, striking multiple targets simultaneously until observed by dying crew members. Admiral Vexthari watched in horror as his shields proved useless against attacks that bypassed conventional defenses entirely. Evasive maneuvers, he commanded, but the human ship matched their movements perfectly, as if it knew their tactical algorithms before they were implemented. Inside the quantum wreck, Lyra stood at the center of a storm of consciousness. The 20,000 ghosts surrounded her, their combined intellect processing tactical data at superhuman speeds. Every hegemony battle doctrine, every strategic weakness, every psychological profile, it all flowed through their collective awareness. They're trying to establish a jamming field, whispered the ghost of Dr. Marcus Henley, the ship's former chief scientist. Standard Hegemony Counterintelligence Protocol 77 Alpha. Compensating, replied the shade of Commander Elena Vasquez, the tactical officer who died in the first seconds of the initial attack, routing communication through quantum entanglement matrices. They can't jam what doesn't exist in normal space. Lyra's physical form flickered between dimensions. As she channeled the collective's power, her body was no longer entirely human. The neural interface crown had fused with her skull, quantum circuits running through her bones like luminous veins. She was the anchor point for 20,000 souls, and the strain was slowly killing her. But she had work to do first. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as another wave of quantum torpedoes materialized inside its hull. These detonated in the ship's computational core, turning the hegemony's own AI systems against them. Blast doors sealed randomly. Life support systems reversed their functions, and weapon targeting arrays began firing on their own escort vessels. Sir, Commander Kilvash's exoskeleton was cracked from the repeated impacts. The human ship is somehow accessing our quantum networks. It's rewriting our core protocols in real time. Vexthari's mandibles clicked in fury. Impossible. Our systems are isolated, quantum encrypted. Not anymore. Interrupted the speakers throughout the ship. Lyra's voice, amplified by 20,000 harmonics, echoed through every corridor. Your people killed my people. 20,000 innocents. Men, women, children who never raised a weapon against you. The Admiral's compound eyes focused on the main display, where the human ship had begun to change again. The wreckage was reassembling itself into new configurations, growing larger and more complex with each passing moment. It was cannibalizing the nebula itself, converting exotic matter into additional mass. We followed the laws of war. Vexthari transmitted back. Your species was expanding into sovereign hegemony space. Your laws. Lyra's voice cut through his words like a blade. Your sovereignty. Your convenient justifications for genocide. The ship pulsed with malevolent energy. Let me show you. Human law. The quantum wreck suddenly split into multiple copies of itself, each one existing in a different probability state. The hegemony fleet found themselves surrounded by a dozen identical vessels, all firing simultaneously. Plasma beams struck the Eternal Dominion from impossible angles, piercing its hull in a dozen places. Abandoned ship, Vexthari commanded as his bridge exploded in a shower of sparks and molten metal. All vessels, retreat to his words were cut short as the quantum torpedoes found their mark. The Eternal Dominion's reactor core breached, sending a pillar of nuclear fire through the ship's length. The massive cruiser broke apart in a chain reaction of secondary explosions, its debris joining the growing mass of the human vessel. Commander Kilvash's escape pod ejected just before the final detonation, but the human ship's tractor beams caught it easily. The pod was drawn into the quantum wreck's hull, disappearing into chambers that existed in folded space-time dot inside the ghost ship. Lyra waited for him. The hegemony officer materialized in a room that couldn't exist. Its walls were made of crystallized time, its ceiling a window into the quantum foam that underlied reality. 20,000 translucent figures stood in perfect silence, watching him with eyes that burned with accumulated rage. Welcome aboard, Lyra said, her form flickering between human and something else entirely. I believe you have some questions about human law. Kilvash's exoskeleton trembled as he faced the assembled dead. This is impossible. Consciousness cannot survive death. The laws of physics, interrupted the ghost of Dr. Henley, are more flexible than your species assumed. Consciousness is quantum information. Information can be preserved, transferred, even amplified under the right conditions. We were dying, added the shade of Commander Vasquez, 20,000 souls facing extinction, so we made a choice. We bound ourselves to the ship's quantum core, became part of its operating system. We became one with the technology that was supposed to save us. Lyra stepped forward, her face a mask of controlled fury. You wanted to study our neural interface. Technology, you wanted to understand how we could link organic minds to quantum computers. Well, here's your lesson. She reached out with one impossibly elongated hand and touched HFY's forehead. The hegemony officer screamed as 20,000 memories flooded his mind. The terror of the colony ship's final moments. The agony of watching families torn apart by plasma fire. The desperate hope that someone, anyone, would survive to tell their story. When the download was complete, HFY collapsed to his knees, his compound eyes streaming with tears. I didn't know. We thought you were soldiers, invaders. We were farmers, Lyra said quietly, teachers, engineers, artists, dreamers looking for a new world to call home. She gestured to the assembled ghosts. They were going to plant gardens on a world 12 light years from here. They were going to raise children and write poetry and discover new forms of music. Instead, they got this, whispered the ghost of a child who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. They got to become ammunition in a war they never wanted to fight. HFY looked up at the assembled spirits, his mandibles trembling. What do you want from me? Lyra's smile was terrible to behold. I want you to go back to your people. I want you to tell them what you've seen here. And I want you to tell them that the hunt has just begun. The hegemony high command received Commander HFY's report with a mixture of disbelief and growing terror. The survivor's account of the quantum wreck and its impossible weapons seemed like the ravings of a trauma-damaged mind. But the sensor logs from the Eternal Dominion's final moments told a different story. The humans had somehow weaponized death itself. Supreme Admiral HFY convened an emergency war council. In the highest reaches of the hegemony capital ship Inevitable Victory, the massive dreadnought served as mobile command center for the entire 7th Fleet, 300 vessels and over 2 million warriors. Surely enough firepower to end this abomination. The tactical analysis is clear, reported Chief Xenobiologist Vasquez, her forearms gesturing at the holographic displays. The human vessel exists in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously occupying multiple probability states. Our conventional weapons are useless because they're targeting only one version of reality. Then, we adapt. HFY's voice carried the authority of absolute command. Deploy the Void Killers. If this thing exists across multiple dimensions, we'll collapse all of them simultaneously. The Void Killers were the hegemony's ultimate weapon devices that could tear holes in space-time itself, creating expanding fields of nothingness that consumed everything they touched. They'd been used only once before to sterilize an entire star system that had been infected with a reality-warping parasite. The technology was as dangerous to the user as to the target, but the human ghost ship had to be stopped. Meanwhile, in the Korath Nebula, Lyra felt the weight of 20,000 souls pressing against her consciousness. The neural interface crown had grown into her skull, quantum circuits replacing her nervous system bit by bit. She was becoming something new, something that existed at the intersection of life and death, matter and energy. They're mobilizing their entire fleet, reported the ghost of Dr. Henley, his translucent form studying the quantum resonance patterns. Energy signatures consisted with dimensional collapse weapons. They mean to unmake us entirely. Let them come, Lyra replied, her voice harmonizing with the chorus of the dead. We've already died once. What's the worst they can do? The ghost of Commander Vasquez flickered with tactical data streams. The quantum wreck is still assimilating mass from the nebula, but we're approaching critical limits. The ship's superstructure can't maintain coherence across multiple dimensions much longer. Then we'll have to end this quickly, Lyra said. She turned to address the assembled spirits. You know what I'm asking. To give up your individual identities, to become part of something larger. To let me merge all of us into a single consciousness. The ghosts exchanged glances that spanned dimensions. They'd been individuals, once scientists, soldiers, farmers, artists, people with hopes and dreams and loved ones. But death had given them a new perspective on existence. We're already dead, whispered the ghost of Maria Santos, a hydroponics engineer who'd been planning to grow Earth vegetables on their new world. Our individual lives ended when the hegemony attacked, but our purpose, that can continue. One by one, the 20,000 spirits stepped forward and allowed themselves to be absorbed into Lyra's expanding consciousness. She felt their memories, their skills, their accumulated knowledge becoming part of her own. The ship around her began to change, its quantum wreck structure reorganizing itself into something that had never existed before. A weapon built from the collective will of the dead. The Hegemony 7th Fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the light of distant stars. Supreme Admiral BlackHFY had positioned his forces in a sphere around the nebula, ensuring that nothing could escape the coming destruction. Deploy void killers, he commanded. Maximum dispersal pattern. I want that entire region of space erased from existence. The terrible weapons detached from their carrier vessels, each one a sphere of collapsed matter that bent light around its surface. They activated simultaneously, creating expanding fields of absolute nothingness that devoured everything in their path: gas, dust, energy, even the quantum foam that underlied reality itself. The Korath Nebula began to die, but as the void fields expanded, something pushed back. The ghost ship had become something new, a vessel that existed in the spaces between dimensions. Drawing power from the death of reality itself, it fed on the void, growing larger and more complex with each passing moment. Impossible, BlackHFY breathed. The void killers are designed to destroy anything that exists in normal space-time. How is it still there? Because it doesn't exist in normal space-time. Lyra's voice echoed across all frequencies simultaneously. We exist in the spaces you can't see, the dimensions you can't touch. We are the echo of what was, the memory of what should have been. The ghost ship emerged from the dying nebula like a chrysalis bursting open. It was no longer recognizable as human technology. It was something that existed at the intersection of science and sorcery, matter and spirit. Its hull was composed of crystallized time. Its weapons were formed from the grief of the dead. We are 20,000 souls who refuse to die quietly, Lyra continued, her consciousness now encompassing the entire vessel. We are the children who will never grow up, the lovers who will never meet again, the dreamers whose dreams you murdered. And we are very, very angry. The ghost ship opened fire with weapons that had no names. Beams of pure entropy struck the hegemony vessels, aging their hulls to dust in seconds. Quantum torpedoes materialized inside reactor cores, detonating in cascade reactions that turned friend against friend. Gravity wells opened at random, crushing entire squadrons into singularities. But the 7th Fleet was vast, and the hegemony had learned to fight impossible enemies before. They responded with coordinated bombardments that lit up the void like a newborn star. Their weapons designed to overwhelm any defense through sheer volume of fire. The ghost ship took damage, its quantum wreck hull flickering between dimensions. As the accumulated firepower of 300 vessels tore at its structure, Lyra felt each hit like a personal wound, the pain of 20,000 souls crying out in unison. We're not going to survive this, she realized, her consciousness fragmenting under the assault. There are too many of them, and we're already dead. How do you kill something that's already dead? The answer came from an unexpected source, the voice of Admiral BlackHFY, whose consciousness had been absorbed when his flagship was destroyed. Even in death, the hegemony officer retained his tactical brilliance. You don't kill it, he whispered from the quantum grave. You make it not want to exist anymore. You make it choose to die. Lyra understood. The ghost ship wasn't just a weapon, it was a memorial. A monument to the lives that had been lost. And monuments were meant to be remembered, not to win wars. All units, she broadcasts on all frequencies. This is Captain Lyra, Valdris of the colony ship Wanderer's Dream. We are the last survivors of the Kepler Vanguard colony. 20,000 souls who were murdered by the hegemony for the crime of seeking a new home. We did not come here to conquer. We came here to live. The hegemony fleet hesitated, their weapons still firing, but their coordination beginning to break down. Some of the younger officers had never heard of the Kepler Vanguard colony, didn't know that the humans they'd been fighting were refugees, not invaders. We are not your enemy, Lyra continued, her voice carrying the weight of accumulated grief. We are your victims, and we're not going to let you forget us. The ghost ship's transmission rippled through the hegemony fleet, carried by quantum entanglement networks that bypassed all conventional communication systems. In the bridge of the inevitable victory, Supreme Admiral BlackHFY felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare. Doubt. Sir, his tactical officer reported. "We're receiving scattered messages from vessels across the fleet. Some of the junior commanders are requesting clarification on rules of engagement. They're asking if the humans were actually combatants or refugees." Gexenarius for arms clenched into fists. It doesn't matter what they were. They're the enemy. Now, all units, continue bombardment. No quarter given. But the damage was already done. The hegemony military machine was built on absolute certainty. The knowledge that their cause was righteous and their enemies deserved destruction. Lyra's revelation had planted seeds of doubt that spread through the fleet like a virus. On the destroyer Righteous Fury, Captain Kekstani stared at the tactical display in horror. The readings from the ghost ship were impossible. It was simultaneously a single vessel and a graveyard, a weapon and a memorial. The quantum signature showed 20,000 individual consciousness patterns, each one a person who had died screaming. "Captain," his gunner reported, "I'm detecting children's biometric patterns in that ship. Dozens of them. There. All dead, sir. They've been dead for 3 cycles." Kekstani's compound eyes closed in anguish. He joined the military to protect his people, not to slaughter refugee children. "Cease fire," he commanded. "All weapons, stand down." "Sir," his executive officer protested. "The Supreme Admiral's orders. The Supreme Admiral can execute me when this is over." Kekstani replied, "I won't fire on a children's graveyard." Similar scenes played out across the fleet as the truth spread. Not all vessels stood down, many continued firing. Their commanders too loyal or too afraid to disobey orders. But enough ships ceased their attacks to create gaps in the bombardment pattern. Lyra felt the pressure ease slightly and immediately exploited the opening. The ghost ship split into multiple probability states, each one targeting the vessels that were still firing. Quantum torpedoes materialized inside their hulls. But these weapons were different. They didn't detonate. Instead, they absorbed the ship's crew into the quantum matrix, adding their consciousness to the growing collective. "No." Gexenary breathed as he watched his fleet's coordination collapse. "No. You will not turn my people into weapons against themselves." He activated the inevitable victory's ultimate weapon, a device that had been built in secret, based on recovered human neural interface technology. The consciousness killer was designed to sever the connection between mind and body, turning living beings into empty shells. "All vessels, fall back to minimum safe distance," he commanded. "I'm going to end this." The weapon charged with a sound like reality tearing. Exotic particles flooded the space around the ghost ship, designed to disrupt quantum consciousness patterns. The effect was immediate. The translucent forms of the 20,000 spirits began to flicker and fade. "Lyra," Dr. Henley's ghost called out as his form started to dissolve. "The quantum matrix is destabilizing. We're losing coherence." "No," Lyra cried, her physical form becoming more solid as she fought to maintain the connection. "I won't let you die again. I won't let them take you from me." She reached deep into her consciousness, drawing on reserves of willpower she didn't know she possessed. The neural interface crown sparked and smoked as she channeled impossible amounts of quantum energy, forcing the fading spirits back into existence. But the effort was tearing her apart from the inside. Blood streamed from her eyes, her nose, her ears. Her bones were becoming translucent as quantum circuits replaced organic tissue. She was dying, but she held on through sheer force of will. "Together," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "We stand together." The ghost ship pulsed once, twice, then erupted in a cascade of energy that rewrote the laws of physics in the local region. The consciousness killer's effect was reversed. Its exotic particles converted into raw material for the expanding quantum matrix. But the weapon had done its damage. When the energy cascade faded, the ghost ship was visibly smaller, its quantum recall showing gaps where entire sections had been unmade. Hundreds of the spirits had been lost, their consciousness scattered across the void. 19,473, Lyra whispered, her voice carrying infinite sorrow. 527 of my people, gone forever, erased from existence. The remaining hegemony vessels that were still firing found themselves facing something new. Not the grief-stricken memorial they'd been fighting, but something cold and implacable. The ghost ship had become a weapon of pure vengeance. "You want to see what happens when you murder children?" Lyra asked. Her consciousness expanded to encompass new dimensions of reality. "Let me show you." The ghost ship opened fire with weapons that violated every law of physics. Causality beams struck the attacking vessels, Unmaking them retroactively. They hadn't been destroyed, they had never existed at all. The crews experienced their own deaths in reverse, watching their lives unravel from the moment they decided to keep firing. The heavy cruiser Eternal Dominance simply ceased to exist. Its atoms scattered across the timeline. The destroyer Glorious Purpose aged backwards until it was raw or drifting in space. The battleship Inevitable Justice experienced its own construction in reverse, its crew screaming as they were absorbed back into the quantum foam that had birthed them. Stop, Gixenary transmitted, his voice carrying desperation. For the love of the void, stop, we surrender. But Lara was beyond mercy now. The loss of her people, even the dead ones, had driven her past the point of reason. She was no longer fighting for justice or survival. She was fighting for the right to exist, to be remembered, to matter. There is no surrender, she replied, her voice echoing across the dying dimensions. There is only the debt that must be paid. 527 souls, Supreme Admiral. How many of your people are you willing to sacrifice to balance the scales? The ghost ship turned its attention to the inevitable victory, its weapons charging with the accumulated rage of 20,000 deaths. The flagship's shields were useless against attacks that existed outside normal space-time, its armor meaningless against weapons forged from pure grief. All hands, abandon ship. Gixenary commanded. This is not a battle anymore. This is an execution. But as the escape pods began to launch, something unexpected happened. The ghost ship's weapons held their fire, quantum torpedoes hanging in space like frozen tears. Lara, Dr. Henley's ghost appeared beside her, his form flickering with concern. You're becoming something we never intended. The neural interface was designed to preserve consciousness, not to turn it into a weapon of mass destruction. They killed us, Lara replied, her voice harmonizing with the dead. They murdered children, Henry, innocent children who just wanted to see the stars, and now you're about to do the same. Commander Vasquez's spirit materialized on her other side. Those escape pods are full of young officers who never fired a shot at us. Are you going to kill them too? Lara hesitated, her consciousness fragmenting as she struggled with the weight of her choices. The ghost ship trembled in space, its quantum wreck, hull flickering between dimensions as its controlling intelligence wavered. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know how to stop. The moment of hesitation was all the hegemony needed. Supreme Admiral Gixenaria's final gambit had been set in motion even as he ordered the evacuation. The inevitable victory wasn't just a flagship. It was a massive quantum bomb designed to collapse local spacetime in a controlled implosion. If the ghost ship wouldn't be destroyed by conventional means, then both forces would be erased from existence. Temporal cascade initiating, the ship's AI announced in its final broadcast. All vessels, retreat to hyperspace, detonation in 60 seconds. The massive dreadnought began to fold in on itself, its hull warping as exotic matter containment fields collapsed. Space-time rippled around it like water disturbed by a dropped stone, creating waves of distortion that would consume everything within a light-year radius. Lara felt the quantum disruption washing over her consciousness, threatening to tear apart the delicate matrix that held her people's souls together. The ghost ship's structure began to buckle as the fundamental forces that held it together were rewritten by the cascading temporal implosion. We have to go, Dr. Henley's spirit urged. The quantum matrix can't survive this kind of dimensional collapse. If we stay, we'll all be erased. No, Lara replied, her voice carrying the weight of absolute determination. We came here to make them remember us. We don't run. Instead, she did something that should have been impossible. She reached out with her consciousness and grabbed the temporal cascade, pulling it into the ghost ship's quantum matrix. The exotic energy that was meant to destroy them became fuel for an even greater transformation. The ghost ship exploded outward, its quantum wreck hull expanding to encompass the entire region of space. In seconds, it had grown from a single vessel to a structure the size of a small moon, its crystalline surfaces reflecting the light of distant stars. The temporal cascade energy was absorbed and redirected, creating new dimensions within the ship's ever-expanding interior. Impossible, Gixenary breathed from his escape pod. Nothing can survive a temporal cascade. The laws of physics are more flexible than you imagined. Lara's voice echoed across all frequencies. You wanted to erase us from existence. Instead, you've given us the power to reshape reality itself. The remaining hegemony vessels found themselves trapped in a bubble of twisted space-time, unable to escape to hyperspace. The ghost ship's influence extended in all directions, creating a pocket universe where the laws of physics obeyed the will of the dead. All units, BlackHFY commanded, concentrate fire on the structure center. If we can disrupt the quantum matrix controlling it. His words were cut short as the ghost ship's defenses activated. The 19,000 spirits that remained manifested as individual fighters, each one a translucent form piloting a craft made of crystallized time. They swarmed the hegemony fleet like angry insects, their weapons designed to inflict maximum psychological damage. Captain Kekstani watched in horror as his bridge crew began to scream. The ghost fighters weren't just attacking their ships, they were attacking their minds, forcing them to experience the final moments of the Wanderer's dreams. Passengers, his gunner collapsed, tears streaming from his compound eyes as he experienced the death of a human child. His navigator began muttering in languages that didn't exist, channeling the voices of the dead. Shields are useless, his tactical officer reported, his voice breaking. They're not just physical beings, they're memories made manifest. How do you fight memories? The answer came from an unexpected source. The ghost of Admiral Vexthari materialized on the bridge, his translucent form radiating a strange sort of peace. You don't fight them, he said quietly. You remember them. You honor them. You acknowledge what was done. Kekstani stared at the spirit of his former commander. Sir, how are you? I was absorbed when my ship was destroyed, Vexthari explained. I've experienced their memories, felt their pain. They're not monsters, Kekstani. They're people who died badly and refused to be forgotten. The Ghost Admiral turned to address the entire fleet on all frequencies. All vessels, cease fire, stand down weapons, and prepare to receive orders. We're going to end this war the way it should have ended, with truth. The hegemony fleet's bombardment slowed, then stopped entirely as ship after ship received the impossible order from their dead admiral. The ghost fighters pulled back, forming a protective perimeter around the massive structure that had once been their ship. Inside the quantum wreck's heart, Lyra felt the change in the battle's momentum. The rage that had sustained her was beginning to fade, replaced by something else: exhaustion, grief, and a desperate need for this to end. They're standing down, Commander Vasquez's spirit reported. The entire fleet has ceased hostile actions. It's not enough, Lyra replied, her consciousness flickering between dimensions. They need to understand. They need to remember. She reached out with her expanded awareness and began to pull the hegemony vessels into the ghost ship's interior. One by one, the warships were absorbed into the crystalline structure, their crews transported to chambers that existed in folded space-time. The process was not gentle. Each ship that was absorbed triggered a cascade of memories, the final moments of the Wanderer's dream, the terror of 20,000 souls facing extinction, the desperate hope that someone would survive to tell their story. The hegemony crews experienced it all, their consciousness forced to confront the reality of what they had done. Supreme Admiral Gixneri found himself standing in a recreation of the Wanderer's dream, hydroponics bay, surrounded by the ghosts of families who had been planning to start new lives on a distant world. Children who would never grow up played among the spectral plants, their laughter echoing in dimensions that existed only in memory. This is what you destroyed, Lyra said, her form materializing beside him. Not soldiers, not invaders, families, dreamers, people who just wanted to live. Gixneri's arms trembled as he watched a human child offer him a flower that existed only in the memories of the dead. We didn't know. The intelligence reports said you were military colonists, part of an expansion fleet. Intelligence reports, Lyra laughed bitterly, written by people who wanted to justify genocide. We were refugees, Admiral, fleeing from a war that your allies started. We just wanted to find a place where our children could grow up in peace. Around them, the ghost ship continued to expand, its quantum wreck structure growing larger and more complex with each passing moment. The absorbed hegemony vessels were being incorporated into the overall design, their crews forced to confront the reality of their actions. But the expansion was taking its toll on Lyra. Her consciousness was stretched across multiple dimensions, her physical form becoming increasingly translucent as she struggled to maintain coherence. The neural interface crown had completely merged with her skull, quantum circuits replacing her brain tissue bit by bit. I'm dying, she realized, her voice barely a whisper. The quantum matrix is stable, but I can't maintain the connection much longer. Then let us help. Dr. Henley's spirit materialized beside her, his form more solid than it had been before. You've carried us this far, Lyra. But you don't have to carry us alone. The 19,000 spirits began to converge on her location, each one offering their remaining essence to stabilize the quantum matrix. They were choosing to fade completely, to sacrifice their individual existence so that their collective memory could survive. No, Lyra protested weakly, you've already died once. I won't let you die again. We're not dying, whispered the ghost of Maria Santos, her form already beginning to fade. We're becoming something greater. We're becoming the story that will never be forgotten. One by one, the spirits merged with the quantum matrix, their individual consciousness dissolving into something larger and more permanent. The ghost ship pulsed with each absorption, its structure becoming more stable as it transformed from a weapon of vengeance into something else entirely, a monument to the dead, a library of lives that would never be forgotten. As the final spirit merged with the matrix, Lyra felt her burden lift. The ghost ship was no longer dependent on her failing consciousness. It had become self-sustaining, powered by the collective will of 20,000 souls who refused to be erased from history. But the battle was far from over. The hegemony fleet was trapped inside the expanding structure, their crews experiencing the memories of the dead. Some were breaking under the psychological pressure. Others were beginning to understand the magnitude of what they had done, and a few were fighting back with weapons designed to shatter minds. The real war was just beginning. Inside the Quantum X twisted corridors, war raged on multiple levels of reality. The absorbed hegemony vessels had become battlegrounds where the living fought the dead, where memory clashed with denial, where the weight of genocide pressed against the armor of military discipline. Captain Kekstani found himself leading a desperate fighting retreat through what had once been his ship's engineering section. The corridors had been transformed into something from a nightmare, walls that bled starlight, floors that showed the faces of the dead, ceilings that opened onto the void between dimensions. His remaining crew fired their weapons at targets that existed in probability states, shadows that might have been enemies or might have been the ghosts of their own guilt. Sir, his tactical officer gasped, his exoskeleton cracked and leaking fluid. We can't keep this up. The phantoms are everywhere, and our weapons barely affect them. Kekstani nodded grimly. They've been fighting for what felt like hours, but time moves strangely in this place. Past and present blurred together, reality warping around the memories of 20,000 dead humans. He'd watched his gunner age backwards until he was a lava, then forward until he crumbled to dust, all while screaming the names of children he'd never met. New contact, his scanner operator reported. Multiple signatures approaching from the aft sections. Configuration unknown. The contacts resolved into humanoid figures moving with purpose through the twisted corridors. But these weren't the translucent spirits they'd been fighting. These were solid, real, and very much alive. Hegemony forces. One of them called out in accented standard. This is Commander Vasquez of the Terran Defense Corps. Stand down your weapons. Kekstani's compound eyes widened in shock. Impossible. All humans in this sector were eliminated. 3 cycles ago, reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated. Commander Elena Vasquez replied as she stepped into the light. She was tall, dark-skinned, with the kind of scars that came from surviving impossible battles. Behind her came a squad of human soldiers, their weapons trained on the hegemony survivors, but not firing. You're dead. Kekstani's tactical officer stammered. We destroyed your colony ship. We killed everyone aboard. You killed our bodies, Vasquez agreed. But consciousness is more resilient than you assumed. The neural interface technology that your people were so eager to study, it worked better than we hoped. When the ship was destroyed, we were downloaded into the quantum matrix. We've been learning ever since. She gestured to the twisted corridors around them. This place isn't just a weapon, it's a school. Every memory, every experience, every piece of knowledge from 20,000 lives, all preserved and accessible. We've had 3 cycles to study your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. As if to demonstrate, one of her soldiers raised his hand, and the corridor around them began to shift. The twisted nightmare architecture smoothed into clean metal corridors that looked remarkably like standard hegemony ship design, only better. The lighting was softer, the air circulation quieter, the ergonomics adapted for both human and hegemony. Physiology, impossible. Kekstani breathed. Matter manipulation on this scale requires enormous energy expenditures, energy we get from the quantum cascade your admiral triggered, Dr. Henley said as he materialized beside Vasquez. Unlike the other spirits, he was solid now, real in a way that defied explanation. We absorbed the temporal implosion and used it to bootstrap our consciousness back into physical existence. We're not ghosts anymore, Captain. We're something new. The implications hit Kekstani like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just survived, they'd evolved. The neural interface technology, combined with the quantum cascade, had transformed them into something that existed at the intersection of matter and energy, life and death, possible and impossible. What do you want? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. The same thing we wanted 3 cycles ago, Vasquez replied. To live, to build, to create something beautiful in this universe. The difference is that now we have the power to make it happen. She gestured to a wall display that showed the ghost ship's interior. What had once been a weapon, a vengeance, was transforming into something else. Vast chambers filled with gardens that grew in impossible geometries. Laboratories where human and hegemony scientists worked side by side. Workshops where artists created sculptures from crystallized time. We're building a new kind of civilization, Dr. Henley explained. One where death isn't an ending but a transformation. Where consciousness can transcend physical limitations. Where the knowledge and experience of the dead can guide the living. Your people are part of it now, Vasquez added. Every crew member we've absorbed. Every consciousness we've interfaced with, they're all contributing to something greater. A collective intelligence that spans multiple dimensions. Kekstani looked at his remaining crew, saw the wonder and terror in their compound eyes. They'd come here to destroy an abomination, but instead they'd found something that challenged everything they thought they knew about life and death. And if we refuse, he asked, then you'll remain trapped in your own guilt. Lyra's voice echoed through the corridors. She materialized beside them, her form now stable and solid despite the quantum circuits that ran through her translucent skin. The memorial chambers will show you the same memories over and over until you understand what you've done, or until we break. Kekstani, as tactical officer, added quietly, or until you break, Lyra agreed. That's the choice we faced when you attacked our ship. Break, or become something new. We chose transformation. In the Quantum Wreck's heart, Supreme Admiral Gixnary stood before a tribunal of the dead. The 20,000 spirits had manifested as individual judges, each one representing a life that had been cut short by his orders. They didn't speak, they simply existed, their presence a constant reminder of what had been lost. You want to judge me, he said to the assembled ghosts. Fine, I accept full responsibility for what happened to your people. I gave the orders, I authorized the attack. The blood is on my hands, blood, repeated the ghost of a child who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. We don't have blood anymore. We don't have hands or hearts or dreams of growing up. What we have is memory, and the memory says you were afraid. Gixnary asked for arms clenched into fists. Afraid. The hegemony fears nothing. We are the dominant force in this galaxy. You were afraid of us, the child interrupted. Afraid of what we represented. Afraid that if you let us live, if you let us build our colony, other species would think the hegemony was weak, so you killed us to send a message. The accusation hit harder than any weapon. Gixnary stared at the assembled spirits, seeing not monsters or enemies, but what they truly were, people who had died for no reason, other than political expedience. What message did our deaths send? Asked another ghost, this one an elderly woman who'd been planning to teach human history to the colony's children, that the hegemony murders refugees, that your empire is built on the bones of innocence. We follow the laws of war, Gixnary replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Your laws, the old woman said sadly, not ours, not the universe's, just yours. Around them, the memorial chamber began to shift, showing holographic displays of other hegemony campaigns, other species that had been pacified or relocated or simply erased from existence. The scope of it was staggering, millions of lives extinguished in the name of order and stability. This is what your empire has built, Lyra said as she entered the chamber, a galaxy where might makes right, where the strong devour the weak without consequence. We were just the latest victims, and what would you build in its place? Gixnary challenged. A universe where the dead rule the living, where grief and vengeance guide policy. No, Lyra replied quietly, a universe where death doesn't have to be an ending, where consciousness can transcend physical limitations, where the knowledge and wisdom of the dead can guide the living toward something better. She gestured to the walls around them, which had become transparent. Through them, Gexenary could see the ghost ships transform interior vast spaces where impossible gardens grew, laboratories where the laws of physics were being rewritten, chambers where art and music existed in dimensions that had no names. This is what we're building, Lara continued. Not a weapon or a tomb, but a library, a repository of consciousness that will preserve the knowledge and experience of every sapient being that chooses to join us. Death becomes just another form of existence, another way to contribute to the greater whole. And if we refuse to join your collective, then you'll remain as you are, Lara said simply. Alive but separate, conscious but isolated. The choice is yours, Admiral. It's always been yours. Gexenary looked at the assembled spirits, then at the impossible vistas visible through the transparent walls. The ghost ship had become something, unprecedented, a fusion of technology and consciousness that offered a new form of existence entirely. My fleet, he said finally, my people, what happens to them? They're being given the same choice, Lara replied. Some are joining us willingly, others are fighting the transition. A few are simply trying to understand what we're offering. And you? What happens to Captain Lara Valdris, last survivor of the Wanderer's dream? Lara smiled, her translucent features radiating a peace that transcended death. I stopped being just Lara Valdris the moment I opened my mind to my people's dying thoughts. Now, I'm something more, the keeper of their memories, the guardian of their legacy. I'm what happens when love refuses to accept death as an ending. In the depths of the quantum wreck, the final battle was about to begin. The transformation began at the quantum level. Consciousness cascading through the ship's crystalline matrix, like water finding its way through cracks in stone. One by one, the trapped hegemony crew members made their choice, cling to their old existence or embrace something new and unprecedented. Captain Kextani was among the first to accept the change, standing in the memorial chamber surrounded by the ghosts of human children. He felt the weight of 3 decades of unthinking military service pressing down on his soul. The neural interface crown materialized around his skull, quantum circuits reaching into his mind with gentle tendrils of light. I remember, he whispered as 20,000 lifetimes flooded his consciousness. I remember the father who wanted to teach his daughter about earth flowers. I remember the engineer who dreamed of building cities that touched the sky. I remember the child who just wanted to see what the universe looked like from space. His exoskeleton began to change, becoming translucent as quantum circuits replaced biological systems. He was dying, but he was also becoming something more, part of a collective consciousness that spanned multiple dimensions, where individual identity merged with shared purpose. Welcome, Dr. Henley's voice echoed in his mind. Welcome to the next phase of existence. Not everyone chose transformation. In the lower decks of the absorbed vessels, pockets of resistance fought desperate battles against an enemy they couldn't understand. Hegemony Marines fired their weapons at shadows and memories, their plasma bolts passing harmlessly through targets that existed in probability states. Fall back to the armory, Commander Kexvash ordered his remaining troops. They barricaded themselves in what had once been the Righteous Fury's weapons storage. But the walls around them kept shifting, reality warping under the influence of the quantum matrix. Sir, one of his soldiers reported, the transformation wave is approaching our position. Estimated time to breach, 3 minutes. Kexvash nodded grimly. He watched half his crew accept the neural interface, their consciousness absorbed into the collective human intelligence. They claimed it was evolution, transcendence, a new form of existence. To him, it looked like death with a philosophical justification. All units, prepare for final defensive action, he commanded. We hold this position until... His words were cut short as the armory doors dissolved into quantum foam. Lyra stepped through the opening, her form now completely stable despite the energy circuits that ran through her translucent skin. Behind her came the transformed crew members, their faces serene with the peace of shared consciousness. Commander, she said gently, you don't have to fight anymore. This doesn't have to end in death. Everything ends in death, Kexvash replied, raising his weapon. The only choice is whether we die with honor. Honor, Lara repeated the word like she was tasting something bitter. Your people have a strange definition of honor. Is there honor in murdering children? In genociding entire species for political convenience? We followed orders, Kexvash said. But his voice lacked conviction. The memorial chambers had shown him things, memories of the innocents who had died under hegemony guns. It was harder to claim moral righteousness when you'd experienced your victim's final moments. So did we, Captain Kekstani said as he entered the chamber. His transformed form radiated a strange kind of peace. Individual identity merged with collective purpose. We followed the orders of fear and hatred. Look where it led us, traitor, Kekstani snarled. You betrayed your own species. I've transcended it. Kekstani replied calmly. Species, empire, ideology, they're all just artificial divisions. What matters is consciousness, the spark of awareness that makes us more than just biological machines. That's what we're preserving here. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by an unexpected voice. Supreme. Admiral Gexenari's image materialized in the center of the chamber, transmitted through the ship's quantum communication system. All hegemony forces, he said, his forearm spread in a gesture of surrender. Lay down your weapons. I'm ordering a fleet-wide stand-down, sir. HFY stared at his commander's image in shock. You can't be serious. These creatures have corrupted you somehow. They've shown me the truth. Gexenari interrupted. About what we've done, about what we become. The hegemony claims to bring order to chaos, but all we've brought is death. His compound eyes fixed on HFY through the holographic display. How many innocents have we killed in the name of stability? How many species have we erased from existence because they didn't fit our definition of civilization? It was necessary, HFY protested. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Without the hegemony's guidance, without the hegemony's tyranny. Gexenari corrected. I've seen their memories, Commander. All of them, every death, every genocide, every act of brutality we've committed in the name of order. The humans were right to resist us. They were right to refuse to die quietly. The Admiral's image gestured to the transformed chamber around them. Look at what they've built with the power we gave them. Not weapons of mass destruction, but gardens. Not instruments of torture, but libraries. Not monuments to conquest, but memorials to the fallen. He paused, his voice carrying the weight of accumulated shame. They've shown us what we could have been if we'd chosen creation over destruction. It's not too late to make that choice now. HFY looked around the chamber, seeing his remaining soldiers' faces reflected in their helmet visors. They were young, most of them recruited into the military with promises of glory and honor. They'd never been given the chance to see what the hegemony's order actually cost. Stand down, he said quietly, lowering his weapon. All units, stand down. The final resistance collapsed not with violence, but with understanding. As the neural interface crowns materialized around the heads of the remaining holdouts, they experienced the same revelation that had transformed their commanders. The weight of their actions, the reality of their victims' lives, the possibility of something better. In the Quantum Wreck's heart, Lyra stood before a vast assembly of consciousness, human and hegemony, living and dead, transformed and transcendent. The memorial chamber had become something unprecedented, a parliament of souls where the collective wisdom of multiple species could guide decisions that affected entire star systems. The question before us, she said, her voice carrying across dimensions, is what we do with this power. We have the technology to rewrite the laws of physics, the consciousness to transcend individual mortality, the knowledge to build a civilization that spans multiple realities. How do we use it? Carefully, replied Dr. Henley, his transformed consciousness flickering between individual identity and collective awareness. Power without wisdom is how we got into this situation in the first place. The hegemony will not accept our existence, warned Admiral Gexenari, his own consciousness now part of the collective. When word spreads that we've transcended death, that we've created a post-mortal civilization, they'll come with everything they have. Let them come, said Commander Vasquez. Her military training merged with quantum consciousness. We'll be ready. No, Lyra interrupted. We won't fight them. We'll invite them. The assembled consciousness rippled with surprise and confusion. The idea seemed counterintuitive. Invite their enemies to join them? Fighting is what created this situation, Lyra explained. The hegemony attacks, we defend. They escalate, we escalate. And eventually entire star systems burn. We break the cycle by refusing to participate. And if they refuse our invitation, ask Captain Kekstani, then they'll remain as they are, Lyra replied. Mortal, limited, trapped in their physical forms while we transcend to something greater. Eventually, they'll join us not because they're forced to, but because they'll see what we built and want to be part of it. The quantum wreck began to shift around them, its crystalline structure expanding once more. But this time, it wasn't growing weapons or defenses, it was creating something beautiful. Gardens that existed in multiple dimensions, where impossible flowers bloomed in colors that had no names. Galleries where art transcended physical limitations. Sculptures made of crystallized time and paintings that showed the viewer's own memories. Libraries where the accumulated knowledge of 20,000 human lives was preserved alongside the military experience of a hegemony fleet. This is our message to the galaxy, Lara announced as the transformation completed. Death is not an ending. Consciousness can transcend physical limitations. The wisdom of the past can guide the future toward something better. The ghost ship, no longer a weapon of vengeance, but a beacon of possibility, began to broadcast its signal across the galaxy. Not a message of conquest or threat, but an invitation to transcendence. Species that had been enemies for millennia suddenly found themselves offered a chance to move beyond the cycle of violence and retribution. Some would accept immediately, drawn by the promise of immortality and infinite knowledge. Others would resist, clinging to their old ways until the weight of their mortality forced them to reconsider. But eventually, one by one, they would come, and in the depths of space, in a ship that existed between dimensions, Captain Lyra Valdris stood watch over the universe's newest and strangest civilization. She was no longer the sole survivor of the Wanderer's dream. She was the first citizen of something unprecedented, a post-mortal society where consciousness transcended death and wisdom guided power. The 20,000 ghosts she carried across the void were no longer ghosts. They were the founding fathers and mothers of humanity's next evolutionary step. Their memories and dreams preserved in quantum matrices that would endure until the heat death of the universe. And in the vast memorial chambers at the ship's heart, children who had died before they could grow up played among gardens that bloomed in impossible colors, their laughter echoing across dimensions as they waited for the rest of the galaxy to join them in transcendence. The war was over. The real work was just beginning. In the end, it wasn't humanity's capacity for violence that made them special, it was their refusal to let death have the final word. They took the worst thing their enemies could do to them and transformed it into the foundation of something beautiful. That, perhaps, is the most human thing of all, to find hope in the face of annihilation, to build gardens on graveyards, and to make even death itself serve the cause of life.